found out my best friend slept with my fiancé the night before our engagement party, and I still showed up smiling. I even hugged her. That's the part people can't seem to understand when I tell this story. Why didn't you explode? Why didn't you cancel everything? Why didn't you drag them both through the dirt? Because sometimes the most powerful move isn't destruction. It's patience. The proof came to me at 2:17 a.m. I remember the time because I was awake, too anxious to sleep. The party was the next evening. Family flying in, friends driving hours, a backyard tent already set up with lights and rented tables. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally I would have ignored it, but something in my chest felt tight, like it already knew. The message was a single photo. No caption, just an image. It was grainy, clearly taken from inside a car at night. Through a windshield, two silhouettes inside my fiancé's truck. Him and her, his hand on her thigh, her face turned toward him, kissing. The timestamp in the corner was from earlier that night. I stared at it so long the screen dimmed. I didn't cry immediately. I zoomed in, checked the license plate, the bumper sticker I bought him last Christmas. Her bracelet, the one I gave her on her birthday. It wasn't vague. It wasn't questionable. It was real. I texted her. "Are you awake?" No response. I texted him. "Where are you?" He replied almost instantly. "At Ryan's, helping him with something." Ryan, of course. The safest lie is one that sounds routine. I didn't confront him. Instead, I called the unknown number, straight to voicemail. No name, no message, just silence, which somehow felt louder than anything. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the edge of my bed staring at the wall, replaying the last few months. The way she'd started coming over more often. The way he'd suddenly gotten close to her fiancé drama, offering advice. The group hangouts where they'd share private jokes. I'd noticed the energy shift, but I trusted them both. She'd been my best friend for 11 years. We met in college, cried through breakups together, celebrated job offers, talked about being each other's maid of honor since we were 20. And him? He proposed 6 months ago, in front of our families. He said I was his future. Apparently, I was also his cover. By morning, I had made a decision. The party would go on. Not because I was in denial, but because I needed to see them. In daylight, in front of everyone. I wanted to watch how they moved. The engagement party started at 5 p.m. By 4:30, people were already arriving. I wore the white dress he said made me look timeless. I curled my hair, applied lipstick with steady hands. No one could tell I hadn't slept. She arrived at 5:12, late, wearing the blue dress I once told her was my favorite on her. She walked toward me with open arms. "Oh my God, you look stunning," she said. I hugged her. Her perfume smelled the same. Her heartbeat felt steady. No guilt tremor. No hesitation. Then he came up behind us and wrapped his arm around my waist. The three of us standing there, smiling, like a twisted portrait. I watched their eyes. They didn't linger on each other. They were careful, too careful. That confirmed it. Guilty people overcorrect. Throughout the evening, I played my role flawlessly. We opened gifts. We toasted champagne. People clinked glasses and shouted for us to kiss. He kissed me, soft, public, performative, and she cheered the loudest. At one point, I stepped away to freshen up. Instead, I checked his location. Still on, still shared. He was exactly where he should be, but that didn't erase last night. The photo burned into my brain. When I came back outside, I noticed something small. She was standing alone near the edge of the yard. He was across the patio talking to his cousin, and yet, the tension between them was visible. Not longing, not affection, awareness, like two people holding a secret and trying not to let it leak. I felt calm, almost detached, because here's what people don't realize. The moment betrayal becomes undeniable, love shifts. It doesn't shatter instantly. It cools, hardens, clarifies. Later that night, After most guests had left, she hugged me again. "I'm so happy for you," she whispered. Her voice didn't shake. That hurt more than the photo, because remorse would have been human. This was strategic. He fell asleep quickly that night, exhausted from hosting, or maybe from pretending. I lay beside him and studied his face in the dark. This man was supposed to be my forever. Instead, he was a stranger who shared my bed. At 1:03 a.m., his phone buzzed on the nightstand. He didn't wake up. I picked it up slowly. No password change. Bold. The message preview was from her. "Are you okay?" That was all. Not romantic. Not explicit. Just loaded. I opened the thread. Dozens of messages. Weeks worth. Maybe months. Nothing graphic. Just emotional. Inside jokes. Late night check-ins. "Wish things were simpler. They will be." That line stopped me. They will be. Simpler how? After the wedding? After I was legally tied to him? Or after they figured out how to transition without blowing up their reputations? My chest tightened, but still I didn't wake him. I placed the phone back exactly where it was, because if they thought they were being careful, they had no idea how patient I could be. I wasn't going to scream. Not yet. I was going to understand everything first, because betrayal is one thing, but calculated betrayal? That deserves precision in return. And as I stared at the ceiling that night, one thought repeated in my mind. They thought I was the last to know. They had no idea I was already 3 steps ahead. The morning after the engagement party, he woke up cheerful. "Last night was perfect," he said, stretching beside me. Perfect. I studied his face like I was memorizing it for a police report. "You think so?" I asked lightly. "Yeah." Everyone looked so happy. Everyone. That word almost made me laugh. He rolled over and kissed my shoulder, casual and familiar. The same mouth that had kissed her in that truck. The same hands that had been on her thigh. I felt nothing, and that scared me more than anger would have. He got up to shower. The second the bathroom door shut, I grabbed his phone again. Still unlocked. Still arrogant. Her message from 1:03 a.m. was still there. "Are you okay?" He had replied at 1:17. "Yeah, just tired." She suspects nothing. She suspects nothing. The air left my lungs slowly. There it was. Not confusion. Not emotional weakness. Not a drunken mistake. Coordinated lie. I scrolled further back. Weeks of messages. "After the wedding, it'll calm down. I just need time. I hate sneaking around. You won't have to forever." Forever. My fingers trembled, but not from heartbreak. From clarity. They weren't unsure. They were waiting. Waiting for the safest moment to shift from secret to official. And I was the placeholder. The bridge. The stability while they built something behind my back. I put the phone down before the shower stopped. When he came back into the bedroom, towel around his waist, he smiled. "What do you want to do today? Cancel the wedding. Expose you both. Burn everything down." Instead I said, "Let's get brunch." He grinned. "Sounds perfect." On the drive to brunch, he held my hand over the console, his thumb tracing lazy circles on my skin. I used to find that comforting. Now it felt rehearsed. At the restaurant, he talked about honeymoon plans, Italy, wine tours, starting our forever right. The irony was suffocating. I nodded in the right places, smiled when expected, but inside something was forming. Not revenge, strategy. Because here's what they didn't understand. If they wanted to transition smoothly, they needed my cooperation. If I detonated everything publicly, it would damage them too. But if I stayed calm, if I let them believe I was clueless, they would relax. And relaxed people make mistakes. That afternoon, I texted her. "Brunch later this week? Just us." She replied almost immediately. "Of course, red heart." The heart emoji made my jaw tighten. We met Thursday. Small cafe. Quiet corner booth. She looked radiant. Relaxed. Maybe even relieved. "How are you feeling after the party?" she asked. Good, I said, just overwhelmed. With happiness, I hope? She laughed. I watched her carefully. Do you ever feel like life gets complicated right before something big? I asked. Her eyes flickered for half a second. What do you mean? Like, emotions shifting, things changing. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That's normal before a wedding. Cold feet and all that. Cold feet. That's what she was calling it. I stirred my coffee slowly. Do you ever feel guilty about wanting something you shouldn't? That one landed. Her fingers tightened around her cup. Is this about him? She asked carefully. There it was. Not confusion. Not who. Him. She already knew. I tilted my head slightly. What do you mean? She recovered quickly. I just mean, weddings can bring up old feelings. Old feelings. As if they were ancient history instead of last week in a truck. I leaned back. You'd tell me if something was going on behind my back, right? She didn't hesitate. Of course. The speed of that lie was almost impressive. I nodded slowly. Good, because now I knew exactly who I was dealing with. When I got home, he was in the living room on his laptop. Budget spreadsheet open. I recognized it instantly. The same one labeled post-separation. He closed it too quickly when I walked in. What's that? I asked casually. Nothing. Work stuff. Work stuff. He wasn't even trying anymore. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling again. But this time, I wasn't devastated. I was calculating. They thought they were managing timing. They thought they were protecting reputations. They thought I'd find out when they were ready to explain it gently. But here's the truth they hadn't considered. I was the only one with the full picture. The photo, the messages, the timeline. And once you hold all the pieces, you control the board. I reached over and gently touched his shoulder in the dark. He stirred. Do you love me? I whispered. He didn't hesitate. Of course I do. The ease of that answer told me everything. Because loving someone and planning their replacement at the same time requires a specific kind of person. And I finally saw him clearly. I turned onto my side, facing away from him. He wrapped his arm around my waist. Comforting, possessive, unaware. They thought I suspected nothing. But suspicion wasn't what I felt anymore. I felt prepared. And by the time they realized that, it would already be too late. 3 weeks before the wedding, I made my decision. Not in anger, not in heartbreak, in clarity. I wasn't going to confront them privately. I wasn't going to beg for the truth they'd already proven they couldn't give me. If they wanted to build something out of secrecy, I was going to remove the secrecy. Publicly, the invitations were already sent. Deposits paid. 200 guests confirmed. Family flying in from 3 states. Church booked. Reception hall decorated. They were counting on momentum to carry them through. They were counting on me not wanting to cause a scene. They were wrong. The night before the rehearsal dinner, I printed everything. The photo, screenshots of the messages, the line that kept echoing in my head. She suspects nothing. I placed the papers in a simple white envelope. No drama, no glitter, just evidence. The rehearsal dinner was intimate, close family and wedding party, which meant her, which meant him, which meant the people who would be most affected. Perfect. He stood up halfway through dinner to give a toast, talking about fate, about finding his best friend, about loyalty. The word loyalty almost made me choke. She sat 2 seats down from me, smiling like she belonged in this story. And in a way, she did. When he finished his toast, everyone clapped. I stood up slowly. Can I say something? I asked sweetly. Of course, no one said no. I held the envelope in my hand. I just want to thank everyone for coming. I began. He smiled at me, proud. I've been thinking a lot about honesty lately. That made him shift slightly. Subtle. But I noticed. I think before 2 people get married, there shouldn't be any secrets. The table got quiet. Her fingers tightened around her wine glass. I also think best friends should protect each other. Now she wasn't smiling. I pulled the photo out first, set it gently on the center of the table. His truck, his hand, her face. The silence that followed felt physical, heavy. "What is that?" his mother whispered. I didn't look at her. I looked at him. "Do you want to explain?" I asked calmly. His face went white. This isn't what it looks like. Classic. I slid the printed messages onto the table. "They will be. After the wedding." "She suspects nothing," gasped. Her chair scraped against the floor. "It's not," she started. "Don't," I said quietly, not yelling, not shaking, just final. "You both had months to figure out how to transition," I continued. "I figured the least I could do was give you the stage." His father stood up. Her sister started crying. He looked at me like I'd pulled a weapon. In a way, I had. Truth is a weapon when someone's built their life around a lie. "I was going to tell you," he said desperately. "When?" I asked. "After the honeymoon?" No answer. She tried again. "It wasn't serious." I laughed softly. "You were planning forever. Don't insult me." The room felt chaotic. Voices overlapping. Questions firing. But I felt calm. Because here's what no one talks about. The moment you stop protecting people who betrayed you, your fear disappears. He reached for my arm. "Please, let's talk about this privately." "No," I said. "You didn't keep it private." The rehearsal dinner ended early. Obviously, the wedding was canceled before dessert. Deposits lost. Whispers spread fast. Family divided. But here's the part that surprised me. I didn't feel destroyed. I felt free. 2 days later, she texted me. "I never meant to hurt you." That line always fascinates me, because betrayal requires action. Repeated action. Secret action. Hurt isn't accidental when it's sustained. I didn't respond. He showed up at my apartment a week later. No ring on his finger. No confidence left in his posture. "You ruined everything," he said. I stared at him. "You ruined it." I revealed it. He ran his hands through his hair. "It didn't have to be like that." Yes, it did. Because if I had confronted them privately, they would have minimized it. Called it confusion. Blamed stress. Begged for time. But sunlight removes interpretation. Public truth forces accountability. "Do you know how embarrassed I am?" he asked. Embarrassed. Not heartbroken. Embarrassed. That told me everything. "You should be," I said evenly. He searched my face for regret, for softness, for the woman who once imagined forever with him. She wasn't there anymore. "You didn't even give us a chance to fix it," he said quietly. I almost smiled. "You were fixing it," I replied. "Just not with me." He didn't argue, because he couldn't. The wedding never happened. The friendship never recovered. And as messy as it was, I have never once wished I'd stayed silent. Because here's the truth. They thought I was clueless. They thought I was the safe option while they tested something forbidden. They thought timing would protect them. But they forgot one thing. The person being betrayed always has the most power once they stop being afraid of losing you. And if you think I should have handled it privately instead of exposing them at the rehearsal dinner, tell me in the comments and subscribe now. The night I realized my husband was planning his exit, he was sitting across from me helping our daughter with her math homework, explaining fractions, smiling, patient, like a man who had no intention of disappearing. I only found out because of an email notification that popped up on our shared iPad. Subject line, lease approval confirmation. First, I assumed it was spam. Then I saw his full name and an address I didn't recognize. My heart didn't drop. Paused, like my body needed a second to decide whether this was real. I clicked it. "Congratulations on securing your new residence." New residence. Singular, not ours. The lease start date was 6 weeks away. 6 weeks. I could hear him laughing in the living room while I stared at the screen. I could hear the scratch of pencil against paper as our daughter worked through her homework. My hands felt numb. I scrolled further. Security deposit paid. First month's rent paid. Electronically signed. The timestamp was 3 days ago. 3 days ago we had gone out for dinner. He'd held my hand across the table. Told me he was proud of how far we'd come. 9 years of marriage. 2 kids. A mortgage. And apparently, a countdown clock I didn't know existed. I didn't storm into the living room. I didn't confront him. I locked the iPad, set it back exactly where it had been, and walked out with a smile. "Dinner's ready," I said calmly. He looked up at me and smiled back. Perfect timing. That was the moment I understood something terrifying. He wasn't conflicted. He wasn't struggling. He was transitioning, like I was a chapter he'd already finished reading. That night, I lay beside him in bed, listening to his breathing steady into sleep. I stared at the ceiling and replayed the last few months in my head. The extra gym time, the sudden networking events, the way he started keeping his phone on silent, the nights he stayed up texting after I fell asleep. I had noticed. I just didn't want to interpret, because once you interpret, you can't unsee. The next morning, he kissed me goodbye like always. "I might be late tonight," he said casually. "Big meeting." Of course, big meeting. I waited 10 minutes after he left. Then I opened his closet. There were subtle gaps I hadn't noticed before. A few dress shirts missing. One pair of shoes gone. The good overnight bag not on the top shelf anymore. He hadn't left yet, but he was preparing to. Quietly, carefully, strategically. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I opened our shared bank account. And that's when my stomach finally turned. Small transfers. Every 2 weeks. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to build something quietly. Savings redirected into a separate account I didn't recognize. I checked the account holder name. Only his. The pattern stretched back 4 months. 4 months of preparation. 4 months of me cooking dinners, folding laundry, planning a family vacation. 4 months of him building an exit ramp. That evening, when he came home, he looked relaxed. Happy even. "How was your day?" he asked. "Normal," I replied. He nodded, distracted, typing something quickly into his phone before slipping it into his pocket. Later that night, while he showered, I did something I've never done in our entire marriage. I opened his laptop. He'd forgotten to log out. There were emails, apartment listings, conversations with a realtor, budget spreadsheets labeled post-separation. Post-separation. Not if, not maybe, post. There were also messages to someone saved under a single letter, L. Short, casual, familiar, counting down. Soon, I'll handle it. Handle it. Like I was paperwork. Like our life was a logistical inconvenience. My hands started shaking then. Not from heartbreak, from humiliation. He wasn't lost. He wasn't confused. He wasn't spiraling. He was organized. I closed the laptop just before the shower shut off. When he walked back into the bedroom, towel around his waist, he smiled at me. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, and I meant it, because in that moment, something inside me shifted. I stopped being the woman waiting to be left, and started being the woman who knew. The next few days, I watched him differently. He was lighter, less irritated, almost relieved, like the weight of pretending was nearly over. He'd sit at dinner scrolling through his phone with a small smile he tried to hide. He'd volunteer to take the trash out more often, step outside for calls. He thought he was being discreet, but once you see the pattern, it's everywhere. One afternoon, I decided to drive to the address on the lease. It was 20 minutes away, a modern apartment complex with glass balconies and fresh landscaping. The kind of place people move into when they're starting a new chapter. I parked across the street. I didn't have to wait long. His car pulled in. He stepped out confidently, like he belonged there. A woman opened the building door from inside. Blonde, younger than me, casual smile. She didn't look nervous. She looked familiar with him. He leaned down and kissed her. Not rushed, not guilty, comfortable. That's when the tears finally came. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, steady proof that I wasn't imagining this. He wasn't preparing to find himself. He had already found someone else, and I was the last to know. I drove home slowly. By the time he walked through the door that evening, I had already made a decision. I wasn't going to confront him immediately. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg, because he thought he controlled the timeline. He thought I'd find out when he was ready. But what he didn't realize was this. I already knew, and I was about to decide exactly how this story would end. For the next week, I played my role perfectly. I packed lunches. I reminded him about our son's dentist appointment. I asked how the big meeting went. He answered easily, too easily. The confidence in his voice told me everything. He believed he was ahead of me. He believed he was managing the narrative. What he didn't know was that I had already stepped outside of it. The morning after I saw him at the apartment, I called a lawyer. I didn't cry on the phone. I didn't vent. I just said, "My husband signed a lease without telling me. I have documentation. What do I do next?" The lawyer was calm, efficient. "Do not confront him yet," she said. "Gather everything." So I did. I downloaded the lease agreement. I screenshotted the transfers. I printed the emails labeled post-separation. Every piece of quiet planning he thought was hidden became a file in a folder on my laptop. The folder name? Timeline. If he wanted strategy, I could strategize too. That week, I also checked something I hadn't thought about before. Life insurance, retirement accounts, mortgage documents. I realized something chilling. He wasn't planning to leave recklessly. He was planning to leave comfortably. The apartment lease started in 6 weeks, which meant he was going to tell me soon, but not too soon. Just close enough to the move-in date that I wouldn't have time to react properly. He thought shock would paralyze me. He underestimated me. 3 days later, he sat across from me at dinner and cleared his throat. My body went still. "I think we need to talk," he said. There it was, the line he'd rehearsed. I looked up calmly. "About what?" He inhaled slowly, like he was about to perform something brave. "I'm not happy," he said. Classic. "I think we've grown apart. Predictable. I didn't want it to come to this." That one almost made me laugh, because it had already come to this the moment he signed that lease. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he continued. "No, you've been doing a lot of planning. I feel like we both deserve to be happy. We both." He said it like I'd been part of the decision. "I think we should separate." There it was, neatly packaged, delivered on schedule. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make him uncomfortable. Then I stood up, walked to the kitchen counter, and grabbed the folder. I placed the printed lease in front of him. His face changed instantly. Confusion first, then realization, then fear. "You went through my email?" he asked quietly. "That's your concern?" I replied. He stared at the papers. "How long have you known?" "Long enough." The confidence drained from his posture. "You weren't supposed to find out yet," he muttered. "Not supposed to," like I'd disrupted his rollout plan. "You signed a lease," I said evenly. "You moved money. You created a budget for life without me." He didn't deny it, because he couldn't. "I was going to tell you," he insisted. "When?" I asked. "After the security deposit cleared? After you moved your clothes?" He ran a hand through his hair. "It wasn't that simple." It actually was. He just didn't want to admit the truth. "You didn't accidentally fall out of love," I said quietly. "You constructed a replacement." That hit. I saw it in his eyes. The difference between impulsive cheating and calculated transition is intention. He wasn't lost. He was done. And he had been for months. "She doesn't have anything to do with why I'm leaving," he added quickly. I held his gaze. "You signed a lease in the same building I watched you walk into with her." His expression froze. The color left his face. "You followed me?" "No," I said calmly. "I confirmed." He leaned back in his chair like the air had been knocked out of him. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Not in control, just exposed. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," he whispered. But that was the problem. It happened exactly like he planned. The only part that changed was my awareness. He tried to shift the conversation into emotion. "We've both been distant. We stopped connecting. We haven't been the same." I let him talk, because I realized something powerful in that moment. He needed me to be shocked. He needed me to cry. He needed me to beg or rage so he could feel justified. But I was calm, and calm unsettled him. "You don't seem upset," he said cautiously. "I'm not surprised," I replied. That landed harder than any scream would have. The conversation ended without drama. He packed a suitcase that night. Not everything, just enough to begin the slow exit. Before he walked out, he paused at the door. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said. I believed him, but here's the truth no one likes to admit. You cannot want to hurt someone and still deliberately destroy them. Intent doesn't erase impact. The door closed softly, and just like that, the house felt different. Not emptier, clearer, because the pretending was over. He thought he was stepping into something better. But what he didn't realize was this. He had just lost the only person who actually knew him, and I wasn't the one who was about to regret it. The first night he didn't come home, I expected to fall apart. Instead, I slept, deeply, no tension in my chest, no waiting for the garage door to open, no wondering who he was texting beside me in bed, just quiet. The next morning, reality settled in, not as grief, but as logistics. He texted around 9:12 a.m. "Can we keep this civil?" Civil, as if I'd thrown plates, as if I'd screamed, as if I'd been the unstable one. "It is civil," I replied. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "I'll come by later to grab more things." Of course he would. His exit wasn't complete yet. When he showed up that evening, he looked lighter, nervous but lighter, like someone who had finally stepped into the life he'd been rehearsing. He avoided eye contact while gathering his remaining clothes. I stood in the hallway, arms folded, not blocking him, not helping him, just observing. At one point he paused. "This doesn't have to be ugly," he said. "It already is," I answered calmly. He flinched, not because I yelled, because I didn't. There's something about controlled disappointment that hits harder than rage. He left again, this time with almost everything. The closet was bare, drawers empty, the physical evidence of 9 years reduced to scuff marks on hardwood floors. 2 days later, I got a call I didn't expect. From him. "I think we need to talk," he said. "You already said that," I replied. His voice sounded different, less confident. "I left my job. That caught my attention." "What?" "I resigned." That didn't make sense. He'd been building this escape carefully. Why destabilize it? "Why?" I asked. Silence. Then, there were questions about some internal transfers. My stomach went cold. Not because I felt bad, but because I realized how sloppy calculated people can become when they think they're untouchable. "You used company funds?" I asked slowly. "No," he snapped. "Not like that. It's complicated. Complicated usually means reckless." He exhaled heavily. "I thought starting fresh meant starting fresh everywhere." Translation. He burned bridges before making sure the new ones would hold. "And?" I asked. "And it's not as simple as I thought." There it was, the crack. Affairs are exciting when they're secret. New apartments feel romantic when they're theoretical. But reality is expensive, stressful, unforgiving. A week later, I heard through mutual friends that the woman, Elle, had moved out of the apartment. Apparently, the pressure was too much. Apparently, she didn't sign up for drama. Funny, no one signs up for being the afterthought either. That night, he showed up at the house unannounced. He looked tired, not broken, just tired. "She left," he said as soon as I opened the door. I didn't invite him in. "Oh," I said. "That's it?" he asked, almost offended. What would you like me to say? He ran a hand through his hair. I made a mistake. The words hung between us. Not dramatic, not passionate, just inconvenient. You made a series of decisions, I corrected. He looked at me differently then, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. I thought I wanted something else, he admitted, but I didn't realize what I was giving up. That sentence might have worked months ago, before the lease, before the budget spreadsheets, before the quiet money transfers. You didn't give it up, I said softly. You replaced it. He swallowed hard. I was going to handle it better. Handle it like I was a task, process, problem to manage. You don't get to rehearse leaving and then audition for coming back, I said. That one landed. He stepped closer. Is there any chance we can fix this? And there it was, the part he hadn't planned for. The possibility that I wouldn't be waiting. I held his gaze. No. Not angry, not bitter, certain. You're not even willing to try? He asked. I tried for 9 years, I replied. You tried for 6 weeks. He didn't have an answer for that, because the truth is, once someone builds a secret life, you can't unknow that version of them. Even if they regret it, even if they lose everything, you will always know they were capable of drafting your replacement while kissing you goodnight. I don't know who I am without this family, he said quietly. That was the first honest thing he'd said. But identity isn't rebuilt by retreating to comfort. It's rebuilt by accountability. And I wasn't going to be his safety net just because his backup plan collapsed. I hope you figure it out, I said, and I meant it, just not with me. He stood there for a long moment, waiting for hesitation. There wasn't any. Finally, he nodded once and turned away. No dramatic curvie, no final pli. Just the sound of his footsteps fading down the driveway. When I closed the door, I didn't cry. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and looked around the house. Felt different now. Not broken. Stable. Because here's what I realized. He thought he was planning a clean exit. But exits are only clean when both people agree. Otherwise, they're just abandonment with better organization. Months later, the divorce finalized. The house stayed with me. The accounts were divided. The chapter ended. I heard through friends that he was still figuring things out, still searching, still unsettled. And I don't hate him. That's the surprising part. I just see him clearly now. A man who mistook planning for control, who thought timing softened betrayal, who believed he could draft an ending without my participation. He was wrong, because the cleanest exit wasn't the one he rehearsed. It was the one I enforced. And if you think I was too cold for refusing to take him back when everything fell apart for him, tell me in the comments, and subscribe now because the next story makes this one look soft. The night I found the second phone, he was in the shower singing like nothing in his life had ever gone wrong. It was 11:47 p.m. I remember because I had just checked the time after sending a work email. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't suspicious. I was just looking for a charger in his nightstand because mine had disappeared again. That's when I saw it. A slim black phone, tucked beneath a stack of old receipts. Not his regular one. This one didn't even have a case. For a full 10 seconds, I just stared at it. My brain tried to rationalize. Work phone? Backup phone? Old phone? But Mark worked in finance. He didn't need burners. The shower was still running. He was humming off-key like he always did. I picked it up. It was warm. That's what made my stomach drop. Warm meant recent. The screen lit up immediately. No password. Just one notification preview across the top. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Miss you already, Red Heart L. My hands went cold. I didn't scroll at first. Couldn't. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might actually bruise my ribs. The shower turned off. I put the phone back exactly where it was. Same angle. Same receipts on top. Then I walked into the bathroom like nothing had happened. He smiled at me through the fogged mirror. You look tired, he said casually. I am, I replied. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't guilty. He was comfortable. Like this wasn't new. Like this had been going on long enough that he didn't even think about it anymore. I lay in bed next to him that night, staring at the ceiling while he fell asleep within minutes. His breathing steady, peaceful. I kept replaying that text in my head. Miss you already, which meant they had just seen each other. And tomorrow was Saturday. He had told me he had a client golf thing. I felt stupid, not blindsided, not betrayed, stupid, because the signs were there. The late meetings that never quite made sense. The sudden gym obsession. The new cologne he claimed was on sale. The way he started turning his phone face down. But we'd been married 9 years. 9. You don't expect someone to build a second life while sitting across from you at dinner. The next morning, I didn't confront him. Instead, I watched. He got dressed more carefully than usual. New polo shirt. Trimmed his beard with extra precision. You'll be home late? I asked casually while pouring coffee. Probably, he said. Don't wait up. He kissed my forehead. The familiarity of it made my stomach twist. As soon as he left, I did something I never thought I would do. I drove to the golf course he mentioned. His car wasn't there. I checked the clubhouse parking lot twice. Nothing. That's when the numbness set in. Not tears, not screaming, just this eerie calm. I went back home and waited. When he returned that night around 8:30 p.m., he smelled like something that definitely wasn't golf. Not grass, not sun, perfume. He walked in smiling. Long day, he said. How was the game? Exhausting, he replied instantly. No hesitación. That scared me more than anything, because it meant he had rehearsed. I didn't bring up the phone that night either. Instead, I waited 3 more days, and on the 4th day, I looked again. The second phone had moved. Different drawer, still warm. This time, I opened the messages. There were hundreds, weeks worth, maybe months, pictures, inside jokes, plans. And then I saw something that made my throat close. An apartment lease, his name on it, signed 2 months ago. 2 months. While we were celebrating our anniversary at the beach, while he was holding my hand, telling me how lucky he felt. The address was only 20 minutes away. 20. Close enough to maintain both lives. Far enough to keep them separate. My hands were shaking now. Not from heartbreak, from realization. This wasn't an affair. This was an exit plan. He wasn't cheating impulsively. He was building something, carefully, strategically. There were calendar notes in the phone labeled transition timeline. I felt sick. Transition timeline. Like our marriage was a business deal he was phasing out. And then I saw the message that changed everything. Once I tell her, we'll finally be free. Finally. Free. As if I was a cage. I sat on the edge of our bed for a long time. 9 years. Countless holidays. Shared grief when his father died. All of it reduced to a scheduled transition. When he came home that night, he acted normal again. Asked what I wanted for dinner. Complimented my hair. Reached for my hand during a TV show. And that's when I understood the real horror. He wasn't planning to leave dramatically. He was planning to leave clean, organized, prepared, financially secure, emotionally detached. I was the only one still inside the marriage. And for the first time, I asked myself a question that terrified me. How long had he already been gone? The next morning, I woke up before him and just watched him sleep. 9 years of memories sat between us in that bed. Vacations, inside jokes, fights that felt huge at the time but now seemed microscopic compared to this. He shifted slightly and reached for me in his sleep, pulling my arm across his chest. Instinct, habit, muscle memory, not love. And that's when something inside me hardened. He thought he was orchestrating a clean escape. He thought I was clueless. He thought he would control the timing. What he didn't know was that I had already seen the blueprint. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I started gathering information. That same day, while he was at work, I drove to the apartment listed on the lease. It was in a newer complex. Modern balconies, fresh paint, the kind of place people move into when they're starting over. I sat in my car across the street for almost 20 minutes. Then I saw his car pull in. My pulse didn't spike this time. It slowed. He stepped out casually like he belonged there, because he did. A woman opened the building door from inside. Blonde, late 20s, maybe early 30s. She smiled at him like she'd been waiting all day. He leaned down and kissed her. Not rushed, not secretive, comfortable, like this wasn't new, like this was routine. That's when I understood something even worse than betrayal. He wasn't torn. He wasn't confused. He had already emotionally relocated. I drove home without crying. The tears came later. That night, I did something he never expected. I logged into our joint financial account. At first glance, everything looked normal. Then I dug deeper. Small transfers, consistent, over the past 6 months. Not huge amounts, just enough to avoid suspicion. Money siphoned into a separate savings account. His name only. He wasn't just leaving. He was preparing to land softly. And he was doing it using money we built together. I felt anger then. Hot, sharp, clear. But I kept my face neutral when he walked in that evening. "How was your day?" he asked. "Productive," I said. That wasn't a lie. The next week, I met with a lawyer. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't tell my family. I needed clarity before chaos. The lawyer was calm, direct, efficient. "Do you have proof?" she asked. "Yes." "Financial records?" "Yes." "Apartment lease?" "Yes." She nodded once. "He thinks he's ahead of you," she said. I didn't respond. "He won't be." For the first time since finding the phone, I felt something close to control. I didn't want revenge. I wanted balance. If he was going to exit strategically, so was I. Over the next 2 weeks, I moved quietly. I separated finances legally, opened my own accounts, changed direct deposits, documented every transfer he'd made. Meanwhile, he kept playing the role of attentive husband. One night, he even brought flowers home. "Just because," he said. I almost laughed. Was that guilt? Or was he rehearsing his goodbye? A few days later, he sat across from me at dinner, staring at his plate like he was about to deliver bad news. My body already knew what was coming. "I think we need to talk," he said carefully. There it was, the line he'd probably practiced in his head for weeks. I looked up calmly. "About what?" He exhaled slowly. "I'm not happy." Classic. "I think we've grown apart." Predictable. "I didn't want to hurt you." That one almost broke me, because the cruelty wasn't in the affair. It was in the performance. He had already built his future while letting me believe we still had one. "I've been seeing someone," he admitted finally. I nodded once. "How long?" I asked. He hesitated. "Not long." I slid a printed copy of the apartment lease across the table. His face drained instantly. Then I placed bank statements beside it. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. "You went through my things?" he whispered. I stared at him. "That's your concern?" He leaned back, stunned. "You were planning this?" I said quietly. This wasn't confusion. This was construction. He didn't deny it, and that hurt more than anything. "I didn't know how to tell you," he muttered. "No," I corrected him. "You were waiting until it benefited you most." He looked smaller then, not powerful, not strategic, just exposed. "I was going to make it easy," he said defensively. "For who?" I asked. He didn't answer, because we both knew. For him, not for the woman who shared a decade of her life with him, not for the partner who trusted him, for himself. That night he packed a bag, not dramatically, not angrily, just efficiently, like he'd rehearsed this too. Before he walked out, he paused at the door. "I never meant to hurt you," he said again. And for the first time, I felt something close to pity, because he genuinely believed that careful planning made betrayal cleaner. didn't. It just made it colder. The door closed softly behind him. No shouting. No smashed dishes. Just quiet. I stood in the center of the living room and looked around. Everything felt the same, but nothing was. And as I sank onto the couch, one thought repeated in my head. He thought he controlled the ending, but he had no idea I was already rewriting it. The first night alone in the house felt heavier than I expected. Not because I missed him, but because the silence finally had space to speak. No humming in the shower. No phone buzzing face down on the counter. No defection. Just stillness. I walked into the bedroom and opened his closet. Half of it was empty now. Clean. Precise. Like he'd removed himself with surgical care. But he'd left a few things behind. Old hoodies. Worn sneakers. A watch I bought him for our 5th anniversary. Objects that didn't fit into his new, polished life. I almost laughed. Even in leaving, he curated what version of himself moved forward. The next morning, I didn't cry. I made coffee. I called the lawyer. And I moved. Not emotionally, legally. Because while he thought he was ahead, he hadn't accounted for one thing. Documentation beats confidence. By the time he texted me 3 days later asking if we could discuss terms calmly, my attorney had already filed. He called me immediately after being served. "You blindsided me," he said, stunned. The irony nearly made me smile. "I blindsided you?" I asked evenly. "You didn't even try to work it out." I sat there holding the phone, amazed. "You signed a lease," I said quietly. "You moved money. You created a transition timeline." Silence. "I thought we'd separate first," he muttered. "You already did," I replied. He didn't call again after that. What I didn't expect was how quickly his new life would crack. 2 weeks later, I ran into an old mutual friend at the grocery store. He looked uncomfortable. "I heard about Mark," he said carefully. I nodded. He hesitated. "You know he left his job, right?" My stomach tightened. "What?" "He resigned last week. Something about internal financial reviews." I didn't ask more questions. I didn't need to. Strategic men sometimes overestimate their own precision. And apparently, the same quiet transfers he thought were invisible had drawn attention. A few days after that, he texted me late at night. "Can we talk?" I didn't respond. Then another message. "It's not going how I expected." I stared at the screen for a long time. Not out of longing, out of clarity. Because this was the part he hadn't rehearsed. The part where consequences don't follow the script. A week later, he showed up at the house. Not confident, not polished, just tired. "She moved out," he said the moment I opened the door. I didn't invite him in. "She said the stress wasn't what she signed up for." Of course she didn't. Affairs are exciting in the shadows. They're heavier in the daylight. "You lost your job?" I asked calmly. He nodded once. "It's temporary. Maybe, maybe not. But that wasn't my concern anymore." He looked at me differently then. Not like the woman he was phasing out, but like something stable. Familiar. Safe. "I made a mistake," he said quietly. There it was. The confession. Not when he built the second life. Not when he drained shared accounts. Not when he kissed someone else in broad daylight. Now, when his landing wasn't soft. "I thought I wanted something new," he continued. "But I didn't realize what I was risking." I let the silence stretch, because for months he had controlled the timing. Now I did. "You didn't risk it," I said finally. "You replaced it." He flinched. "I never stopped caring about you." I almost felt sad for him, because he genuinely believed that caring and betrayal could coexist without consequence. "You didn't stop caring," I agreed softly. "You just stopped choosing." That hit harder. I could see it in his face. "I don't know what to do," he admitted. That was the first honest sentence he'd said in weeks. And it changed nothing. Because here's the part no one talks about. Once you see someone build a secret exit, you can't unsee it. Even if they come back. Even if they apologize. even if the other life collapses. You will always know they were capable of constructing your replacement while eating dinner across from you. I hope you figure it out, I said gently. He searched my face for softness, for hesitation, for an opening. There wasn't one. Is there any chance? He started. No, I said calmly. Not angry, not bitter, just certain. Because the truth is, the second phone didn't just reveal an affair. It revealed who he was when he thought I wasn't looking. Calculated, detached, already gone. And I refused to spend the rest of my life wondering when someone might start drafting another transition timeline. He nodded slowly, and for the first time since this began, he looked uncertain. Not about us, about himself. He left without another word. I closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt final. Months later, after the divorce settled and the house was legally mine, I found that second phone again. He must have forgotten it in a drawer. I turned it on one last time. Dead battery. No signal. No notifications. Just an empty device that once held a secret life. I dropped it into the trash, and as it disappeared beneath the lid, I realized something almost ironic. He thought he was building freedom, but he was just building isolation. And I thought I was losing a husband, but I was actually losing a man who had already left long before he packed his bag. Sometimes the cleanest exit isn't the one they plan. It's the one you enforce. And if you think I was too cold for refusing to take him back, tell me in the comments, and subscribe right now if you want more real stories where the betrayal runs deeper than it first looks.